Welcome, everyone. My guest today is Lead Analyst Logan Mohtashami to talk about Fed policy, mortgage rates, new listings, and why stress in parts of Florida don't signal a larger housing problem. Logan, welcome back to the podcast.
Welcome, Sarah. Where are you at right now?
I am in Cambridge in the UK. I'm at this beautiful hotel, so I'll be here for the next 10 days. Super excited.
Good. You deserve some time off. Of course, I never take any time off because I wouldn't know what to do with myself, and I'd be absolutely losing it. Went and saw Jurassic Park, and I was just like, oh, I might be missing something. So I just don't know how to relax.
And I think you
Getting
went on a
offline would be
Sunday.
crazy
You
for me.
should be able to be off on a Sunday and go see a movie.
No, I can't. It's just not me.
Well, I'm doing this as a working vacation because I'm the same way. Like, I don't want to be gone too many days. So anyway, great to be here. Lots to talk about. Since we last talked, of course, we had the July 4th holiday and we had some new trade war news where Trump has pushed the deadline out a little bit to August 1st, but also seems like there's some more punitive things happening. So what's your take on the trade war?
So, of course, the irony of everything is that the government jobs data might have given Powell a little bit more leeway to not cut at the end of July. Now, personally, for myself, even if the jobs report was weak, let's say there was no government jobs created and there was only 74,000 payroll and private payrolls are slowing down. Private payroll has been slowing down for some time. They wouldn't have cut anyway. They raised their inflation expectations. Obviously, inflation has not hit what they thought there would be, and now they're saying it'll eventually come in the second half of 2025. So it's going to take a lot for them to move. But now the trade war tap dance, Godzilla tariffs, however we want to define it, we've moved the deadline from July 9th to August 1st. And I think Monday morning, Trump even announced 25% tariffs on Japan if they don't do a deal. So bully ball tactics still. We obviously didn't get 90 deals in 90 days. And we're trying to work some stuff out. But clearly, I cannot see them cutting rates in July. Especially with questionable deals not being made yet. It would have to take like a bunch of deals being done, written in stone, and the CPI inflation report being tamed, the PCE inflation report being tamed, and jobless claims rising noticeably to make the Fed move in July. They are very adamant on waiting until they see the data break, until they make their moves. And the evidence we saw was in 2024 when they admitted that they probably waited too long to cut then. And again, what the Fed believes is they believe they're still in restrictive policy. Because they believe they're in modestly restrictive policy, they can still cut rates and be in neutral. Where President Trump wants accommodative policies, he wants a much lower rate than anybody's talking about. And just for myself, because private payrolls have been slowing for some time, getting to neutral policy in a quicker fashion actually gives you a better backdrop in case labor does break. But everyone's playing a game. It's like the old Western movies where you have three: the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they're all looking at each other. And what's going to happen? Powell's on one side, Trump's on the other side. The economic data is in the middle, and everybody's looking to see who breaks or who flinches first. And it's going to be an interesting July. But I'd imagine if the government payrolls didn't explode higher, it would have been much worse.
It's disappointing for everybody in the mortgage business, right? Like, we're fingers crossed that we would see a rate cut in July after some people floated it, but there's just not the underlying data to back it up, no matter what Trump tries to do to Powell, seemingly. But we still are seeing pretty good mortgage demand. Are you surprised about that?
Yeah, mortgage demand, of course, our weekly data is fresh. And as you can imagine, any kind of holiday can kind of mess up weekly data. But July the 4th holiday, if it's on a Friday, can really like mess things up for 2 weeks. So one of the things I did is purchase application data, something that is like very forward looking, 30 to 90 days. So The weekend tracker actually just kind of highlighted into that because it's one of these crazy things in 2025. Like when you think of all the headlines of housing, and here we are with 22 weeks of positive purchase application data, 9 straight weeks of double-digit growth, back to 2014 levels, where "Happy" was the main song back then in the billboards. But a lot of that has to do with new listings data growing year over year, and how the data line was constructed, because we had such a low bar from 2020. Like 2024 was a very negative year when rates actually moved up towards 7.5%, and it really created a low bar. And then when rates went down to 6%, and remember, mortgage rates went from the peak in 8% in 2023 all the way down to near 6% in 2024 with zero rate cuts. No rate cuts had. The labor data was getting weaker in the bond market, which typically does sometimes. They overbuy, they oversell. Took the 10-year yield, broke the Hodor line for a very small amount of time, and pricing in much more weakness than the labor data was showing, and then the reversal happened. So we're here. The 10-year yield is at 4.38% today. Mortgage rates are about like 6.75, 6.80, around there. It looks about right considering where the data is, if you believe that the labor data is the most important data for mortgage rates, not the growth rate of inflation, because the growth rate of inflation has already fallen a lot. And we almost got to the 2% handle, and we're not even close to getting sub 6% mortgage rates, because the labor data matters more, because 65 to 75% of where the 10-year yield and mortgage rates can range is Fed policy.
Which is why we need some things to happen here. But I'm glad to see that we're seeing business even so. Let's talk about new listings. Another surprising, maybe something going on there. Let's talk about it.
Well, you know what? New listings data might have peaked already. We're at the seasonal peak period anyway. And last year, one of the calls I got wrong is I thought we could get minimum 80,000 last year. I was 100% sure that would happen last year, and it busted. I think 75,000 was the highest. So in that regard, I still went back to that same call saying we should get at least minimum 80,000. Why do we use that 80,000 level? Is that from 2013 to 2019, 80 to 100,000 would be the norm. We did have some prints at 110,000 in the last decade after.
And that's at per week, right?
Yeah, per week, after the housing crash data line filtered itself out in the system. So I was hoping that we'd have a few weeks, not a lot, but a few weeks between 80 to 100,000 this year during the seasonal peak period. That didn't happen. So new listings data took a big dive. Took such a dive that this last week that it's actually below 2024 levels. But that is common with July the 4th. And again, when July the 4th is on a year-over-year basis, when it is during the week, can really mess up weekly data. So I was anticipating that. But we don't really have many weeks left. I mean, we possibly might have 1 or 2 weeks that can maybe get it above 80,000, see if that could happen. But we're in the seasonal decline. And I always like to remind everyone that, kind of the 2008 to 2012 period, this data line was running at 250 to 400,000 per week.
Crazy.
Credit stress sellers into a underwater marketplace, right? We actually did this presentation today on X. Monthly supply on average. I'm going to take the aggregate average now from 2007 to 2011. The total aggregate monthly supply for the existing home sales market was running at 9.16 months. The last report was at 4.6 months. So it's such a structurally different marketplace now. But now that we're in July 2025, it's like we went through the whole gambit. Like we went through the biggest home sale crash ever recorded history in 2020. We've had 3 years of mortgage rates ranging between 6 to 8% with home sales at record low levels. But the credit markets are so different that it takes time to get inventory to grow, which I love 2025. Out of all the years post-COVID, this is my most favorite year because we're creating balance, right? And that's what you need for long-term health of housing. What happened post-2020 was such an abnormal period of time in history that it was savagely unhealthy. So the new listing data decline, a lot of that had to do with July the 4th holiday. We have another week of tated data, and then after that we can get back to normal. But we're kind of in the seasonal decline period of our total pending home sales, new listings data. and we'll take it every single week, because last year at this time, rates started to fall, head towards 6%. And all of a sudden, the weekly data started to really get positive. And just remember, our weekly pending sales data, these things go into contract. It could take months before they hit to the existing home sales. And existing home sales already months behind of where we are today. So it takes some time to filter itself into the data. But very interesting year, very positive, healthy year in that regards of getting active inventory at least back to the low levels of 2019. Balance, right? Price growth slowing down, good. Inventory up, less competition in terms of the supply out there. It becomes a more buyer market. And why are the home builders at 2019 sales levels? It's because if it was a buyer market for them, they were doing concessions and sellers and giving buyers a choice. So this is why I love this year more than any of the years back in the last 5 years.
Okay, so on the plane over here, 9-hour flight, right? I watched The Big Short, which it had been a few years since I saw it, and I was not covering the industry then. But boy, just the anxiety and just the like, oh, that dread of watching that movie and remembering what that time was like, just as a consumer. You were a loan officer during 2008. I can only imagine. And also seeing all the data that we're talking about, right?
You know what's interesting? One of the charts that we always show on the Nerd Tour and everything, the housing credit market was actually breaking years before the 2008 recession. Like I always say, this is my tombstone chart. When I die, Sarah Wheeler, you got to make sure to put that chart on my tombstone and just lay it there. And then we draw these black lines, and the credit markets were breaking in 2005, 6, 7, and 8. Then the job loss recession happened. So it was such a unique period because the unemployment rate was actually falling, but the credit markets were breaking because there was a massive credit boom, a credit bust. Inflation never really took off from like 2002 to 2005. There's your first clue. Like in the 1940s, that was the hottest home price growth year ever post World War II. 1943 to 1947, inflation took off. 1974 to 1975 was hotter home price growth than what we had recently here. Inflation took off back then. COVID inflation, right? Global pandemics, very inflationary. Then the disinflation happens. But the housing bubble years, no. And if anybody goes back and looks at if anybody goes back, yeah, like you people are going to do that. If anybody goes and sees a CPI and PCE inflation, it never took off. So you had a massive credit boom. You didn't have wages, but you had sustained demand get up there. That is not a good thing. That's nothing to cheer about. And then, of course, the housing bubble crash happened. Credit markets broke. Supply escalated, went vertical, but then you had millions, near 50 millions of distressed sellers into an underwater marketplace. So when you look at the aggregate data of 84 years of U.S. history, that was such an anomaly period. And then we're sitting here in July of 2025. Month of supply is 4.6 months for the existing, 1.54 million active inventory. The foreclosure data is barely smidging up a little bit higher. We're not even back to pre-COVID levels. Such a different marketplace because the entire U.S. economy changed with the 2005 bankruptcy reform law and the 2010 qualified mortgage. Those two things, if I ever had to teach any analyst, you go back and learn those two things and how we just had the longest economic and job expansion ever recorded in history. You know, COVID was a very brief recession, and we still have the benefits of those two regulations in place right now today.
You know, there's been a lot of headlines about Cape Coral, Florida. So Cape Coral, Florida is seeing kind of an explosion of inventory and things aren't selling and all this stuff. And we know that there are like pockets of Florida, especially if it's the condo market that is in trouble. But the headlines on it that I don't appreciate are like, this could be the bellwether. This is the canary in the coal mine. You know, last time Florida showed you what was happening, but it's like the underlying things are not the same. Like it seems to me, but I want to ask you very specifically, when you look at Florida data, see what's happening there, are you worried that there's something systemic happening?
So do you want to know, like, the really rookie ball people out there? We have men, grown ass men, still talking about one or two cities in Florida for like 3 years. Their adult lives are sitting there and just going, "Oh, this is it. This is the next." So just let me like if we want to talk about Florida specific, Sarah Wheeler, do you know what's the percentage of homes that were underwater in Florida? Like
I
back
do
then during the
not.
housing, it
No.
was like 69%. It was
Wow.
some crazy number. I think I'd have to go back and check on this, but I think Cape Cod, or we're talking
Cape
about
Coral.
five, yeah, 5.7 to 7% are underwater. That place was like much similar to Austin. It went up like 76% home price growth in like a 2.5 year period of time. And what Austin and Florida, parts of Western Florida, those places need migration. So what
Yeah.
happens is why I said savagely unhealthy so much. You had so much price inflation that if you don't sustain a 3% mortgage market and get migration in there, the whole system is busted and broken. This is why the whole concept of team higher rates in February of 2021 is like, this has to stop. Y'all don't realize this is a very, very, very unhealthy thing that's happening. And now that we're in 2025, imagine this: we've had rates range from 6 to 8% for 3 years now, and you know we never saw the what we call the mass scale canary in the coal mine, the entire national marketplace, because you could have pockets of the country where you have systemically really terrible housing data, but as an aggregate whole, you could look at the national data. This is why people need to like separate certain things. But even in Florida, it doesn't have like the underwater mortgages and the distressed sellers, and you have other differences, like my interview with Yahoo in 2024 early. Like, do people want to live in Florida still? Like, there are certain, not all home buyers feel this way, but certain home buyers like, why? I don't know the insurance situation. What's it going to look like 5 years from now? I can't get insurance. There are some people who are just going to go, hey, listen, Ohio, Minnesota, Pennsylvania. There are other places that you don't have to worry about insurance and hurricanes and all that stuff. So that is a legitimate thing, and that is a Florida situation. But this systemic risk talk that people have been talking about for 13 years, just we don't have the credit markets. And it's been tested. Like I said, it's July 2025. We did it. We ran through it. It's 3 years. And the reason I use 3 years is because it was 3 years when the housing market bubble peak of sales happened in 2005, and then the housing crash happened in 2008. We're here, 2022, second half, biggest crash in home sales ever. 23, 24, 20, 25, we're in July. We ran through the 3 year gambit. And you look at the aggregate data, does not look anything alike. So I understand, we always say doom porn sells. So I'm the anti-doom porn person, right? And I'm the guy who said housing was savagely unhealthy, in 2022, and very unhealthy in 2021, and unhealthy at the end of 2020. But I could talk about it in an aggregate way. Like a lot of people come to us for our Florida data and our Texas data because we can break things, and we keep that very close in house with real estate investors and Wall Street because we can just make it very, very prolific. But much different marketplace. There's no canary in the coal mine. When we see this, when we see stress, it's in the new listings data. If we had to see anything that would get our eyes open, it's the new listings data. If new listings data went vertical and started going above 110,000, then I'm like, okay, here it is. That's the marker. That's the line in the sand. It's like jobless claims for the recession. If you guys are going with a recession talk, you need jobless claims to get up to 323,000. Don't do it. Like, since the end of 2022, don't go there unless you get this number. And now here we are. So different marketplace, different credit structures, a very anomaly event back then, but it was a credit boom, credit bust, where here was massive amount of inflation, migration, unbelievably low inventory. The lowest active listings ever recorded in history with our data was 240,000 in March of 2022. Much different marketplace than we are right now. And the data shows it in aggregate. 3 years, right? Take June of 2022 to July of 2025, look at it all, take the national data, and there you go. It speaks for itself. Numbers are the closest thing to the handwriting of God, Sarah Wheeler. And you always want to be the detective, not the troll, because we've been doing this stuff since the Peloponnesian War, and we
Whoa!
love it.
3 things in one sentence, in one little section, 3 of your sayings. So it's possible, like what we're talking about is that it's not affecting the larger market. It might not be a great situation if you're in Cape Coral, Florida, right? It might be bad if you're a realtor there or a mortgage person there. It might not be, but
I'm
not
just saying
systemic.
there's a lot of attention for 2 or 3 cities in Florida
Yeah.
for the last 3 years. and not a lot of attention. Like, do you realize nobody's talking about the purchase application data on a national basis? Like,
Yes,
finally,
I
some
know.
people begrudgingly had to do it, and they're like, they don't know. They're like, yeah, I don't know what this means, right? I encourage everyone listening, go read our weekend tracker. When you read the
Yes.
weekend tracker, you get all the data right there. Nothing is going to, we are so far ahead of all the monthly reports that all of you have been reading for years that if anything cracks on the national side, we see it. Now, our personal stuff, our personal data lines, we provide that for any zip code. You can get a free zip code, go to Altos Research, get a zip code, get it there. But we can do things, break it down per zip code, which is much more prolific. I'm just showing you the national aggregate data, and I bring my economic cycle works. Remember, I am an economic cycle person first, housing second, right? And so we put that with Altos data in there, and we incorporated that, and it is a beautiful looking model. I love it. I love it so much. That's why I spend my Friday nights, and Saturday morning
True.
writing that stuff every day. There's so much excitement for me.
Well, Logan, thank you so much. I can't believe we're already at time. We're trying to keep these a little bit shorter since you are on officially this
Four
week,
times a week,
4
Chart
times
Daddy,
a week.
4 times a week. Can you
Yes.
ask for anything more?
So thank you so much for bringing your insights to that. We will talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.